Hi, good afternoon, good morning. Welcome to today's webinar, which is on the subject of From Chaos to Clarity, why good data management matters now more than ever, and what you need to do as a data leader. Really pleased to see so many people coming back for the third session in our November webinar series. A couple of people where this might be the first session that you've joined this November, so great to see you here. Just before we dive in, and if you've been on the previous sessions and you've seen this housekeeping, I apologise, but just before we do dive in, we've got a little bit of housekeeping to cover, which should all be very, very basic to everybody on the call. But if you could just move me forward one slide, Anthony, please.
Of course.
Thank you. So you've got me hosting, Sophie Swift. I'll be your moderator today. And we've got the brilliant Antony Marlow and Rose Attridge joining us. So Director of Data Management and Data Management Consultant here at Cynozure, who will be sharing their wealth of experience on this topic as we go through the call today. You will see that everybody has been muted on this call so that everyone gets the best audio experience. But we also have the chat and the Q&A enabled. Let us know where you're calling from. More importantly, if you've had snow in the UK, we definitely want to hear about that. So let us know where you are. I'm in a very cold Nottingham today. If, as and when you have a question as we go through the call, drop that into the Q&A as well. We'll have time at the end of the session today to go through as many questions as we can get through. So pop them in and we'll do our best to get answers to anybody who chooses to put a question in there for us. So today we're talking specifically data management. For those of you who don't know Cynozure, we are a data and analytics strategy company that supports lots of different types of organisations on their data journey, helping them to fulfil their data potential and be the best they can be with data, which it is a big statement. We do that in lots of different ways, and there are 6 various service areas that we focus on. So anything from data and AI strategy, i.e. what should we be doing to be the best at data in our organisations, all the way through to the hows of data management, architecture and engineering, AI, data culture, and data leadership. Some of you will have been on our previous webinars and seen insights into different areas there, but today we are focusing specifically on data management. Rose and Antony are bringing with them all of their experience in their time at Cynozure and in their careers prior to Cynozure as well. And that spans lots of different types of industries. I'll put a couple of the client names that we work with on the board for you at the moment. You might recognise a few of these brands. But one of the really nice things about sessions like this is that experience that is drawn on to shape the content that we share comes from so many different types of organisation, different sizes, different industries, and there's lots of cross-fertilisation there. So hopefully everybody on the call will find something that they can take away, that they can learn from, and they can implement within their organisations. So I think that's enough from me. So without further ado, what I will do is hand over to Antony and Rose to start us off on today's subject. Thank you, Antony.
Lovely. Thank you, Sophie. First of all, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us, well, here in the afternoon in the UK. It's really appreciated. To set the scene then, for the next kind of 50 minutes of this webinar, let's just kind of all get to a common starting point. So just want to start to land some concepts and ideas before I start to ask a couple of questions that I'd like you to answer as we go through this session. So for those of you who are practitioners of data, or for those who work in business, it's probably unsurprising to you to recognize that data surrounds us. But interestingly, you probably realize and observe that many people still do not recognize this or understand this as a fact. Data exists within all organizations, irrespective of their industry or their market. And it's not just data or technology companies, but it's funny how that is still a myth that still exists in many companies today and who we engage with and who call upon our services. For those organizations who are looking to seek competitive advantage, the big question is about how much do they choose to invest in data management and data itself to enable organizational results. I'm going to talk about more in the session today. So one final thought is around, in our modern world, the pace, the growth of data and data-enabled capabilities such as AI is relentless and ever increasing. And harnessing data offers us a huge opportunity for value. So here's the first question for you all, and it'd be great if you would like to answer this and share your answer in the chat facilities. So with this in mind, I want to ask you this question. Does your organization truly understand the importance of data management to the organization itself? So before you rush to an answer, maybe take a moment to reflect. And perhaps anyone who's willing or brave enough, they might share their responses in the chat as we move forwards. So I'll give you a few more seconds. Okay. So wherever your responses are, what we find increasingly, Rose, myself, the rest of our team, when we engage with organizations, when we engage with other fellow data professionals, what we find is a full spectrum of responses. Most typically, the answer is either no, organizations do not recognize this. And quite often we hear about how data is seen as being a data team problem. Sometimes we get the answer about in part, there might be pockets of awareness and good practice in organizations. Personally, for me, I've seen organizations where they might possess very advanced data capabilities, which are part of a service offering as part of the organization. So some areas of excellence, and yet generally as organizations, the maturity, the recognition of data is actually quite low. And very occasionally, we do see the answer being yes, data management and data is recognized in an organization. Quite often this is seen and recognized at an executive level. And sometimes that comes from a perception about their own experiences at being that level of seniority. So they expect, and they're used to high data quality, good data outputs, but what they don't necessarily see is all the hard work, the sticking plasters, the tactical solutions, the technical debt that goes into actually producing those things for their benefit. And this isn't a facility or a capability that's accessible to all in their business. So when I reflect on this question and think about why is this the case? Why do the vast majority of organizations not recognize the importance of data management? Let's move on to that reason. So why does data management matter? Though it's not always recognized, in many business situations, poor data quality and data management is often the root cause of issues, or it's also a facilitator or enabler to actual business opportunities. So what I'd like to do here now is just share some of the real world examples that we have experienced through our personal careers and engagements with customers, just to bring this to life for people, to help people see real and tangible examples. So the first one that we saw is all around an opportunity in a company, a major client, to save £6 million in optimizing how they actually contacted their customers. And this was a really simple opportunity that had been missed until we were working with this client. Very simply, this was all about changing the way that that client engaged with their customers. They had continued to follow the practice of sending out monthly statements to a customer base of over 1 million customers. And we were able to quickly identify an opportunity to actually just switch that to email. That is not a very sophisticated change. So we took a very conservative estimate of if we made a saving on some of those customers, we could achieve a £6 million all through having a better understanding about the preferences of customers. And this was actually to benefit customers as well as the actual organization in itself. And that was all about understanding value, thinking about some of the capabilities required and aligning those together. Let's continue further on some more examples. Another really perennial one that I'm sure many of us have experienced is having either confidential data or sensitive data, or even worse, personally identifiable data, accessible, stored in inappropriate ways, quite often on things like a SharePoint folder. I think we can all relate to that one. Continue again here about poor customer experience, experienced by continue asking for the same mention over and over again, frustrating both your staff, your employees, and your customers themselves. And then the last one, which we experienced with a client, was a almost criminal missed opportunity that cost an organization anywhere between £7.5 million and £10 million every single kind of quarter, just because they had critical information missing for some of their products. All of these issues had many of their root causes through poor data management and data management practices. So hold that thought from a data perspective. Rose, here's a second question to ponder. Are you there, Rose?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't take myself off mute. Yes, shall we jump straight into the next slide? So we're just going to talk a little bit about data management around AI and the additional considerations.
Excellent.
Okay, so you all know what the non-PC version of this would say, but in the interest of keeping it PC, bad data in equals bad data out. And of course, if we pair bad data with AI, we can expect bad outcomes. So I really can't stress enough about how important it is to have good data management practices around your AI use sort of applications, and also being on top of data quality. I always think about it in terms of, this is a silly example, but I think about it in terms of making a cup of tea. So sometimes I might go to the fridge and I'll take a look at my milk and realise it's probably gone off. But have you ever given it a bit of a sniff and you're like, I'll risk it? And then you make the cup of tea and you think, oh, it'll be all right. And it's absolutely disgusting. It's the same when it comes to data. So we need to make sure that we put the processes in place. Like, obviously, if we don't want another disgusting cup of tea, we always need to make sure that we've got fresh milk. And in order to have fresh milk, you might want to organise yourself a bit better and make sure that you get 4 pints delivered every Wednesday, or however frequently you go through it. So yeah, we need to make sure that we're doing the same when it comes to data, got the right processes in place, and making sure that it's really fit for purpose. So if I move into some more realistic real world examples, thank you. Let's start with looking at an example that might not be aligned to organisational strategy. So if we think about a clothing retailer who might want to move towards more sustainable products, but the demand forecasting uses AI that relies on past sales data, it could forecast higher demand for more wasteful fast fashion items instead of the more sustainable ones that we want to think about going forwards, because it's using the past historical data. We also need to be careful about what we're plugging into the likes of Copilot and Gemini, because it could be that people are unintentionally feeding it the likes of personal information or commercially sensitive information that could then be more widely surfaced and accessed by people that shouldn't have access to it. So in this situation, it really highlights the need for good access controls and things like labelling when it comes to metadata, making sure that everything is tagged and we know what PII is and what our commercially sensitive information looks like. And then finally, another example is if we think about an insurance company who might be using AI to personalize premiums for customers based on risk profiles. If that AI model is using outdated or missing data, let's say in the motor world, incomplete driving records, or in property, incomplete property valuations, then the outcome is going to be that it either overcharges the lower risk customers or it's undercharging the higher risk customers. So naturally, it's going to result in dissatisfied customers, lack of trust, and financial imbalances in the risk pooling. Okay.
Ooh, I mistimed that swig of water badly, didn't I, Rose?
Yeah, it was bad timing for the swig.
It was indeed. So, yeah, let's just kind of focus here then on some of the root causes of why there are these challenges in a lack of understanding and awareness in organizations and in our perhaps business colleagues, which personally I think we as data professionals do not help, because what we rarely explain is why. So hold that thought for a moment. I think another key factor is about the perception of data management in itself, and historically having that focus on governance, which is a dreaded word, control, and I think quite well labeled by a client that we engaged with previously, which is about, data and data governance being seen as the office of no. And that having a root cause around, a fear, a reluctance, a misunderstanding about what the purpose of data management and disciplines such as data governance is actually all about. So here up on the screen is how we like to frame and think about data management ourselves. It is to take a different perspective entirely. For us, this is all about, management, governance, all those different disciplines. They should be aspire about helping us to be the yes and facilitating our peers. And I think increasingly we're seeing that across different organizations and sectors where there is a change in tone and language, and you see words like enablement and excellence, which is exciting to see. It's an invigorating change. So why is it really important right now? And I think the answer that many of you might already know is actually there's a renewed opportunity for us to address some of those challenges and a lack of focus and recognition of the importance of data management. And that's come through the arrival of artificial intelligence and all its related capabilities. So just to kind of frame how we package all of this together to set the scene. Here, we distill this down into this relationship you see here. So very simply, when we think about what we're trying to achieve and help organizations and our clients with is, we hear all these buzzwords, and we hear this through an extension of the people we work with too, those data teams and data leaders. And all they hear is those buzzwords from business, such as AI, ML, data-driven, data-enabled. And these are all outputs, what we would perhaps describe as data products. Those capabilities are clearly important, but they're obviously also only part of the actual overall story. So any data product or output built on any inaccurate, incomplete, untrustworthy data will not add or unlock any business value. I think the other thing to remember as well is sometimes it gets lost that good data management isn't always about, analytics or reporting or decision-making tools. We also need to recognize and remember that good data drives everyday company operations, quite simply in terms of driving operational systems that help us deliver perhaps our goods and services to customers. So even on a personal level, we've all encountered in our own experiences in life, the impact of poor data quality, where a company we're purchasing from maybe has got our details incorrect, such as a delivery address. And this just further highlights the importance and brings home to us personally the critical role of sound data management. So the way we frame this is to think about, as much as data management is the foundation of good quality fit for purpose data to help us drive high quality data assets and data products, we should always lift our head to the horizon, which is, well, why are we actually investing in these things? And that's around business outcomes. And we always think of those in terms of the three different flavors of. So growing the organization in terms of its turnover and revenue, perhaps, or efficiency in terms of profitability, or in terms of spend if it's a not-for-profit organization. And then finally about mitigating risks, whatever they might be in the sector that's relevant to that organization. So one of the things we committed to in the synopsis of this webinar today was that we would lift the lid a little bit on how we think about and frame data management and share part of our data management framework, which is what you see here on the screen. Many of you might recognize, or if not be familiar, there is a wealth of data management frameworks and reference materials out there available that can be leveraged. But there are so many, it can actually be bewildering, and it's also can be confusing because they can contradict, they can confuse, and they have different interpretations and priorities. So it can be very challenging without expertise to understand also how much data management is actually going to be enough, what's fit for purpose for you and your organization. And also there's some subtleties there about the timing and importance of all those various activities. So the way we think about things is, instead of repeating and regurgitating all that good practice that is already available, we like to take that good practice and build upon it. But the way we frame it is to refocus it through the lens of common outcomes. And that's what you see here today. We frame those different disciplines that you might find under the Dharma framework or DCAM or equivalent, and we focus on about why we undertake certain data management activities to effectively manage our data. And we do that in 6 ways. And I'll just give you a whistle-stop tour of those here on the screen. So the starting point, referring back to the previous slide about outcomes and business outcomes, is about, ensuring what we do, what we invest in, our time and our resources is going to be valuable, and also our outputs are going to be actionable through the business and their activities. So I think the starting point here is about, before we even get excited as professionals about the data and data techniques and different solutions, perhaps technologies, what is the actual business outcome we are looking to solve? And does this align to the organization's priorities and perhaps its strategy too? Ensuring data initiatives and activities align to strategic goals is all about prioritization of our effort and helping directly contribute to growth. And that's, a self-fulfilling prophecy in that it gives us clear line of sight to say all of our work is contributing to that growth. So we can explain all the investment that ultimately the board is putting in us as leaders and data professionals. Expertise here can help prioritize those opportunities when there can be so many, or even challenges that you're facing, by helping quantify actual value that could be achieved, and also the feasibility about making those things happen too. So let's move on then to trusted and reliable. This one's pretty self-explanatory, as you can imagine. It's all about the quality of data. And the way we think about it here at Cynozure is not about perfect data or even good data. We like to frame it as being fit for purpose, in that it's reliable enough, consistent enough, and it eliminates repeated verification through different teams, looking at similar sources, and all that time wasted on debating who's actually got the right numbers and information, the data itself, to then make the information and decisions. That then builds and contributes to organizational trust, and increasingly, as our conversations move to data culture and increasing awareness around data in the wider organization, beyond us as a profession, then it's allowing people to focus on outputs, and having that trust helps formulate good data culture. The last reflection when we help organizations and offer advice or even actual help with their data cleansing is that it can be an endless task. It's a bit like painting the fourth bridge. So what we look to do is actually help them identify what is the key data that they should focus upon. What does good or good enough actually look like? Moving on to relevant accessible. So this is all around sound design and sound capabilities to ensure that data is easy to find and readily available, and that being one of the key facets of our principle around data enablement. Here we can help as professionals or ourselves as Cynozure and our peers by bringing together good design and engineering to build pragmatic and scalable solutions for customers and organizations. Continue to move on, controlled and coordinated. This is all around, recognizing that data management is actually a team sport. When we think about the life cycle of data, from its creation to its consumption, this is essentially all about, good data management being around organizing people efficiently, helping them work fluently, helping them understand what their roles and responsibilities are in the creation and management of that data. And a real key factor of that is about awareness and understanding. Continue on then in terms of ethical and compliance. Again, I think this is pretty self-explanatory. It's all about having both legal compliance, but also about building trust with stakeholders. And that's as much about, any regulatory needs or obligations that we might have or our customer organizations might have. It's also about, aligning to the culture and the values of the organization in itself. Does the use of data and how it's used reflect how the company and its people would behave? This can be very challenging, especially when regulations can be quite broad in certain sectors, and interpreting what is fit for purpose. Again, sometimes that's where expertise can come and help you. Lastly, but not least, is thinking about the efficiency and automation of data management. So we would recognize that, thinking about data technologies and data management technologies is important. It helps make sure that data is timely, it makes the management of data really efficient, and it automates repetitive tasks that bog down people, can be very demotivating, and also lack the accuracy that a system can produce by undertaking repetitive tasks. So we always think about data management tools being useful and valuable, but also probably one of the last things that are considered once you've looked at all the other elements, you've clarified people's responsibilities, and you've built a repeatable and scalable process, which you can then automate. So when you think and just reflect on our framework there, we've tried to pivot the lens to help bring this to life for different stakeholders, especially those who work in our organization, in the business, and think about why these things matter to better explain to them so it's more tangible. And if that talks about the why and perhaps the what we do in data management in respect of different data management disciplines, such as governance and quality and risk management, then the next question is all about, well, how could I maybe establish or mature data management in my organization? Here, the way we think about this is about tackling it in an iterative and incremental way. We would always advocate testing, learning, refining, and repeating that exercise to the point where you're improving, but also releasing value as you go along. So our recommendation to organizations and the way we work with our customers is to focus effort on an opportunity which is tangible, it's valuable to the organization, and it aligns to their objectives and goals. And also it's going to be feasible, something that we can achieve with the resources we currently have. Secondly, then we move into a diagnostic stage where we both do some analysis to understand any barriers to success, and then communicate that with senior stakeholders and peers accordingly. And that could be on both the data in itself, in terms of quantifying the current quality of the data that's relevant, but also in the management of that data too. So thinking about how it's produced, where it's created, how it flows, and the different touch points along that journey. In that analysis, we then look to and identify the people that we're going to work with to help optimize and help drive us towards both an output and then an outcome. So the next stage is about tasking people and functions on that journey, identifying resources to help us solve some of the challenges and barriers that prevent the opportunity being realized. But we do that in a tangible and practical way within their remit or their gift, or if necessary, we might escalate and demonstrate the need for this to gain support from perhaps an executive team. And that's really crucial, where we can bring to life some of these issues so we can get that senior sponsorship and budget. As we move towards the end of this iterative process, we might appropriately check the compliance in terms of legal, ethical, and cultural alignment to the organization. And then also we consider opportunities about optimizing the process that we have just built. Depending on how many times we are starting on this journey, you might start very tactically, iterate and refine before you then think about more strategic and permanent solutions. And that could require development, it could require investment in tools.
Okay, so moving back into the AI space, I think we're all very aware that AI is no longer a standalone capability. It's becoming deeply embedded into all modern platforms, and with things like Copilot, we're all using it to try and make ourselves more productive, along with other enterprise applications like your CRMs and Salesforce. And because it's so deeply baked into our day-to-day, it's really important that we do give it that extra consideration. So I'll just dive into a little bit more detail around some of the things that we suggest you consider around that. Starting with AI remediation. So as I mentioned earlier, I cannot stress enough, fixing the gaps in your data quality is super important. We need to make sure that our AI predictions and decisions are reliable, unbiased, and actionable. And the only way we can do that is if we make sure that our data we're using and training the models with is fit for purpose. If you haven't thought about it already, now is also a good time to start thinking about AI principles and embedding ethical considerations into your AI design. So in a similar way to, we might have thought about it a few years back when it came to privacy by design, similar now in terms of thinking about, AI ethics in design. And that's so that our systems not only align with the organisation's values, but it's about making sure that we're not causing any unintended harm to individuals or groups of people. And then on top of the AI principles, we have the regulations that are no doubt soon to be coming our way. So being aware of making sure that we're on top of the latest legislation, such as the EU AI Act. And we obviously need to be doing that to make sure that we firstly remain compliant, but also to dodge any fines and build trust with stakeholders. It's just about doing the right thing by our customers and colleagues. And then finally, explainable AI. This is one of the key principles, and what we should be striving for is making a real conscious effort to try and demystify AI decisions. And that's so that stakeholders understand exactly how they've been made, which again builds trust and will support you with adoption and ensure accountability.
It's a really interesting space, this, Rose, isn't it? That increasingly customers are coming to us to seek help. The one I was just reflecting on there is around the kind of challenge that organizations face when they're building models and looking to source and collect data to drive that model and to feed that model. but inadvertently what they're actually doing is aggregating data that's not appropriate to aggregate. So PII data being a classic example, as you would know.
It's a really good shout. Like you say, a date of birth on its own isn't necessarily going to cause any harm to an individual. But if the model then starts thinking about pairing that with an address and some bank details, then all of a sudden you've got a big problem. So yeah, sometimes things in isolation, okay, but let's think about what happens when that data starts to come together.
Absolutely, yes. Well, I'm conscious this is a data management webinar and not our AI webinar, so
Yeah.
probably to our colleague, our CTO James, on that particular topic. So we've given you a bit of a tour there of, you know, the landscape of data management, how we perceive it in our business, how we shape that in terms of our tools and our thinking, and how we collaborate with clients and organizations and leaders. How else can we help you? So let me just kind of conclude and touch upon some of the things that we can do more tangibly, and then I think we'll work towards some Q&A questions. So when I think about data management, aside from all those different activities that we undertake, I think there was a real light bulb moment for me, having spent a career doing quite a lot of change and transformation as much as data, is that very much data management is about business change in itself. And then when I think about that, you know, being somebody who thinks a lot about metaphors and analogies, I reflect on that being a bit like a journey, where you have a starting point, which is your organization today, and then you have a destination, which is your ambition, both in terms of your business strategy, and then equivalent to that is, well, what's the data management maturity you might need to make those opportunities happen. I think it's fair to say that, you know, across the landscape, every organization is on a different point upon its journey, and that includes many organizations that are still right at the beginning, they're still at the starting gates. So what we can do is help you wherever you are on that journey in itself, whether you're at the start of the journey or you're progressing. We can help you by bringing expertise and guidance and our experience in having worked on many of these projects across sectors and customers. And just thinking about that example and think about the concept of the journey, you know, when you bring in people like ourselves, we can guide you on that journey in terms of our people, like a travel guide, travel agent, or we can help you by developing a guidebook to guide you along that way. And that can then both speed you up in terms of progress, it can save you money, and it can also make it fulfilling too. So we can help you in terms of getting started, give you accelerators, and start to create some tangible progress on that journey itself. We help organizations in many different ways through our data management practice. So that could be in starting from scratch and building you some foundations from a governance perspective. We can help you focus on specific data quality problems that enable business opportunities, something we've done very often, instead of painting the fourth bridge, which lots of data quality challenges and initiatives fail. And then we can also help you about the strategy and the planning of complex programs. So here I'm thinking about a number of customers where we've helped them thinking about master data management as one example. This might be, say, a retail organization looking to deliver a seamless experience across different touch points, whether that's online, whether that's through applications, or whether that is through their store experience. And that's just naming a few. So to conclude, before we kind of move towards kind of questions, yeah, please feel free to reach out to myself, to Rose, or to Sophie. You can also find other resources and materials that's on our website, including more videos and white papers and equivalent. So Sophie, so we move to some questions.
Yeah, we've had a few come in. Thank you for that, both. That was really insightful and really good to see and hear how you think about implementing some of these methodologies and how to get going. So thank you for that. I'm just going to rapid fire some of the questions that have come over if you're comfortable. What are your top tips for establishing data management, Anthony?
Yeah, top tips. So I think just reflecting on that example of how data management usually involves business change, I think the first thing is about being pragmatic on what you can achieve. So boxing up a problem that's feasible, I think is going to be absolutely crucial. I think secondly, wherever you are on the journey, whether you're starting out or whether you're well progressed, this is a journey that you don't want to take alone. So I'd always advocate that you look for advocates, supporters, people, a coalition of willing who are going to help you on that journey, maybe through collaboration, providing resources, and championing the work you do. I think that's a really important factor too. And I think the other thing about establishing probably moves and touches upon, the other things we offer around data culture as well. So, celebrating success, having some lighthouse projects that you can tangibly demonstrate how good data management actually benefits the organization that you're working with. I think they're all things that are crucial as much as, starting to focus on data quality, starting to make data more accessible, helping people identify the roles and how they should contribute to the process. I think those elements are really crucial too.
Brilliant. Thank you for that one. And you touched earlier on how can data professionals get their organizations to understand why this topic of data management is so important and why it does need investment. How do you start that conversation?
So probably like many of my our peers here, certainly data professionals, is that we probably seek to avoid talking about data in itself. Reflecting back towards the beginning of this presentation, I think the crucial thing is that when you're engaging with stakeholders in the organization, you want to focus on their business problems, their business opportunities. I think the thing that makes me smile actually is that when we talk about this internally, I remember Jennifer, our USMD, talking about, for many data professionals, our role is that we're a data therapist. We sit there, we listen to people's problems, and then we look to try and identify solutions or even just work out root causes and take those solutions to help people. So, I think it's all about understanding the business problems and then relating them back to, the root cause of the data management issues and then communicating that to people at all levels.
Perfect. Love that. And then one that I get quite a lot when I'm in conversation with different organizations is that there are just so many different tools available in this space. Like, where do you start in selecting what's right for your organization?
Yeah, tooling is a really tricky one, isn't it? And invariably, I think what we find, not we always find, but certainly what often occurs is people look at data management tooling first. And there's a deliberate reason why we think about data management tooling last, because as much as it's a capability that can help you, it's not going to be a silver bullet and the total solution that's going to fix your problems. So first of all, I think it's about understanding, being honest and pragmatic where you are in your maturity, and then being realistic about what your requirements are going to be. I think the thing that we often see, and I think this is true of data management tools, but generally around technology, data technology or technology in general, is that there are clear or identified technical or technology requirements, but not necessarily the business requirements that would match that. And that's a real danger for organizations where they might end up, invest in poorly and what can be quite expensive tools. So I think you need to think about, have we got a clear business driver and requirement, which means that these tools are going to be useful and therefore adopted by people in the organization. I think the other thing that's really challenging about data management tooling as well is you have to make that decision on, where you are today. But if you want to make a sound investment, you probably want to think about where you're going to be tomorrow as well. So it's crucial to think about, identifying tools that are going to be scalable, that will grow with you over time. Because what you don't want to do, and probably won't get funding for, is some very serious enterprise grade software when you're clearly not ready for those capabilities yet. I think the last thing as well about tooling, and I'm always thinking about this, is around the horses for courses approach as well. So, don't miss the opportunity to reflect on, in your requirements, do you truly need the best tool for every different data management capability? There are so many different ones out there. You're thinking about data quality tools, data catalog tools, maybe master data management tools that might link across those things. Quite often when we work with organizations, and when we do make recommendations, we don't partner with anybody. We're looking at, is there a solution that's perhaps a good all-rounder that might solve all those things? And that's going to be more pragmatic and cost-effective to you, rather than buying a whole plethora of tools that you have to stitch together, and they're both very expensive as well.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. That's excellent advice. Thank you for sharing that. I can see that we're coming to the end of the questions, and I think in probably a record for a Cynozure webinar, that is ahead of our scheduled finish time. So kudos to both of you today. I've had a couple of comments about other webinars that we have referred to on this session. So if you do head to the cynozure.com website, you'll see next week's session, which is all around creating business value from AI. And again, giving you some real frameworks and lessons from the field on there. That's next Tuesday at the same time with our CTO, James Lupton. And if you did want to check out the recordings of the previous webinars that we've done this month, one is on the topic of preparing your data platform for Gen AI. The second is on why data fluency is costing your business. Those are available there too. Or happy to share those with anyone on the call who would like to check them out. This recording will also be available and circulated to everybody on the call within a few days. Keep an eye out for that. And of course, if you do want to share it with any of your colleagues or your peers, you are most welcome to do so. But I think as we're coming up to the end of our presentation today, I'll just say thank you so much to Rose and to Antony for sharing your experience and your expertise with us. And thank you to everyone who took the time out to join us this afternoon. It was great to see you all here, and I hope you have a lovely evening. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everybody.